प्रोफेसर है, ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में टॉप प्रोफेसर है, यूरोप में नेक्स्ट मंथ हो रहा है बड़ा हेल्थ एंड फूड का कॉन्फ्रेंस और सब यूरोप में चेयर करेगा ये कॉन्फ्रेंस। एंड जब हमने शुरू किया मानवी, हम कैंसर क्लिनिक में काम करते थे। हमने इसकी स्पीच सुनी, हमने इसके रिजल्ट्स देखे, हमने इसकी टॉप साइंटिस्ट है वो कहता है ये मानवी में क्या, जो मानवी में है कोई प्रोडक्ट में विच नहीं है। वो कहता है 90% बीमारियां मानवी के साथ एलिमिनेट हो सकती हैं। वाह, isn't that exciting नहीं? मैं कहना चाहती थी आपकी नोटबुक तैयार कर लो, अपने कैमरे रेडी कर लो। किसके नोटबुक दिखाओ? गुड, कैमरे रेडी कर लो, इसको रिकॉर्ड करो, आपकी टीम को बताओ एंड जोर से खड़े होकर तालियां बजाइए। इतने दूर से हम के लिए इंडिया आया है मिस्टर पॉल क्लेटन। जोर से जोर से जोर से।
Namaste. Now, did you know that in India there are more doctors than there are in the whole of Europe? Did you know that? And everywhere I go in India, and I've been to many cities, I see pharmacies and hospitals and cancer centers and heart centers and diabetes clinics. And with so much medical expertise, here in India, you would think that people would be getting healthier and healthier. Am I right? Yes. Well, actually, you're wrong. You are not getting healthier. In India and in America and in Europe, we are getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So when you look at the health statistics, what they are showing us is a very, very dark picture. I'm going to use this microphone now. What is that the numbers of people with diabetes are increasing every year. The numbers of people with dementia, Alzheimer's, are increasing to the point where we simply don't have enough health care. We don't have enough clinics. We don't have enough hospitals. We can't cope with this. Our doctors in Britain, in America, the medical system is on its knees. Hypertension. Over half of the entire adult population of America has hypertension, which is a risk factor for heart attacks and strokes and dementia. Osteoporosis. Our bones are crumbling. Our bones are not as strong as our grandparents. We are physically weaker than they are. If you look at asthma, I'm sure many of you know someone or a child who has asthma, but it's not just asthma. All of the allergic diseases are all of them increasing, including many of the newer diseases. We didn't even know about these 20 years ago. We have now discovered a whole new range of allergic diseases which affect the gastrointestinal system. Autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, Graves' disease, increasing as well. Cancers increasing. And this environment, which is making us so sick, is making our children ill as well. When we conduct our studies and we try to measure how many children have ADD, ADHD, or autism and Asperger's, this too is increasing. So something about the way that we live is making us sick, and it's making our children sick. Now, I was at a meeting a couple of days ago, and I asked the people who were present how many of them had a parent or a partner, someone in the family they knew who had died of heart disease or the complications of diabetes or cancer. And nearly everyone in the room put their hands up. Now, it's always a tragedy when someone you love, when a parent dies, and very often before their time. But you know what the saddest thing about that is? The greatest tragedy of all is that we now understand that all of these diseases are preventable. 90% of cancers are unnecessary. 90% of heart attacks could be so easily avoided. And yet all this is happening in the middle of a culture which is more medicalized. We have more drugs, more doctors than ever before, and yet they are failing to help us. And the reason for this is quite simple. What we have understood is something that we've forgotten many, many years ago, the idea that your food should be your medicine. What we understand now is that food is much more important than medicine in determining how healthy you are. And our problem is, the danger that we have to face is our diet has changed so much in the last 50 years. We're guinea pigs. We're all subjects in a totally uncontrolled experiment, whether you like it or not. Because of the foods that are made available to us, the way they're processed, the way we live, we're living dangerously. We are living a life that makes us sick, and it is making our children sick. And the picture is bleak. It is getting worse. Now, next month I'm chairing a huge conference, 2,000 life scientists in Geneva. Next door is to the World Health Authority, and we're going to be looking at exactly this problem. And many of the people at this meeting have already done studies. We've looked at ways of improving people's health by helping them to eat healthier. And the number one healthy diet that we use is the Mediterranean diet. Now, the Mediterranean diet, if you've heard of it, consists of some very simple basic foodstuffs: olives and olive oil, beans and pulses, seafood, which contains omega-3 fatty acids, and lots of fruits and vegetables. We have found that a diet that is rich in fruits and vegetables cures and prevents many diseases. So, for example, metabolic syndrome. This is the early stage of diabetes. What we found is that when people are put on a Mediterranean diet, their risk of developing diabetes is reduced by 50%. I'm sorry about the tech. This is another study carried out by another colleague of mine, Michel Delorgeril. People who have one heart attack, we know that they are very vulnerable to having a second heart attack. If you put them onto a Mediterranean diet, the risk is reduced by between 50 and 70%. This is very protective. This is much more than drugs can do. And let me just put this in perspective. The same diet that reduces the risk of diabetes and heart attacks, one bottle of Monavie contains more nutritional value than the entire Mediterranean diet. So I'm talking here of juice, which is more powerful than any of the medicines that my medical colleagues have access to. You have something very, very powerful in your hands. But it does more than that, because the Mediterranean diet also reduces the risk of developing Alzheimer's by between 1/3 and 1/2. It reduces the risk of Parkinsonism by approximately 1/2. And it reduces the risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a terrible disease that gradually destroys the lungs and leaves the victim gasping for breath. It is a terrible way to die. But the Mediterranean diet, with an increased intakes of fruits and vegetables, protects against this also. It reduces the risk, again, by about 50%. Let's move about cancer. Cancer is a modern-day illness, one of the most frightening of diseases. And we think of it as inevitable, because the doctors tell us, well, everybody gets it. Well, that's true today, but it wasn't true 100 years ago. We're more vulnerable because our diet has become so degraded. So what happens if we give people who have early stage cancer a Mediterranean style of Sorry, technical guy. Technical. Have this microphone on. Okay. We'll try and go on with this time. This is a study that was carried out at the University of California in Los Angeles, and here we were looking at patients who had prostate cancer. And this group. Could we have this microphone on, please? Okay, I'll try and go on while we're getting this microphone problem sorted. So here we have a group of patients who have early prostate cancer, and half of these patients were given something like a Mediterranean diet. The group that was eating an American diet, at the end of 1 year, 6 out of 46, the cancer had grown in their bodies to the point where surgery was necessary. But in the group that was given the Mediterranean-style diet, not a single patient had progressed. So simply putting people onto a better diet protects against diabetes and heart attacks and Parkinsonism and Alzheimer's and cancers. It protects you against all of the major diseases. Now, if the Mediterranean diet is so good for you, it should protect you from dying, which is a pretty wild claim. But we've studied that too. And this is a study called the HALE study. It involved multiple clinical centers right across Europe, and we followed a large group of elderly subjects for a period of 10 years. And we divided them into different groups, and one particular group was eating a diet. In addition, not smoking. They were allowed to drink. They were allowed to drink a certain amount of alcohol and a limited amount of exercise. And in this group, who were eating the healthy diet, the risk. Thank you. Yes, in this group, the risk of dying from all causes was reduced by 65%. Now, this is absolutely huge. This is much more than doctors can do. Doctors can't do anything like this. The drugs that they use to treat the symptoms of diseases, none of the drugs cure disease. All they do is they reduce the symptoms of the disease. And very often, the disease, despite the treatment, continues to get worse. What we are talking about here is a totally new approach to disease and to health. By giving your body the nutrition it needs, the body can then heal itself. And the body is very good at doing that. And it can do it more powerfully and more sophisticated way than anything that you can get in the most expensive, the most specialized of hospitals. And when I talk about the Mediterranean diet, again, let's compare that to a bottle of Monavie juice. The Monavie bottles contain many, many more nutrients than the Mediterranean diet does. So if the Mediterranean diet can produce this reduction of risk of all of those diseases, if it can stop you from dying in old age, then the Monavie product, we know, will do something similar. In fact, we know that it will do better than that because it has a higher nutrient density than the Mediterranean diet does. So maybe we could speculate as to how effective the Monavie products actually are. Well, now for the first time, we're in a position to be able to do that because what we have done is we have gone backwards in time. We have looked at the nutritional content of the diet that was eaten in Britain during the Victorian period. That was a time when Britain still had an empire. And there were a lot of British people here in India. I tell you, our British culture has fallen to the point where we would be very happy if you came and colonized us. We would appreciate that. So go back to the mid-Victorians. This was a time before cheap energy, before modern technology. Everyone was working. There was no internal combustion engine. There were no elevators. Everyone is working with their hands. And we measured, from the records, we measured exactly how physically active those people were. And we were amazed when we did the calculations. What we found was that they were working 10 hours a day for 5.5 to 6 days a week. They're walking to work and walking back because there are no cars, there are no motor buses. Their leisure time, they're not watching television or playing computer games, they're walking or swimming or wrestling or gardening. Everything that they do involves physical activity. So when we add all of that up, what we found was that the mid-Victorians were physically active, moving around, working with their bodies for between 60 and 75 hours every week. So they weren't like us. They didn't just go to the gym once or twice a week. They were living and working in the gym, and they were so strong and so fit that the average Victorian woman, if she was in a wrestling match with a 21st century man, she would pin him to the ground in 5 seconds flat. They were much stronger, much more physically robust than we are today. And then we looked at what they ate. And that, again, it surprised us. The photographs of that time show us how slim they were. But they were eating large amounts of food. But they were burning all those calories up because they were so physically active. And what are they eating? Well, not much salt, not much tobacco, not much gin or whiskey or vodka. They're eating large amounts of omega-3 fatty acids from salmon and oysters. They're eating 10 or more portions of fruit and vegetables a day. Now, I don't think you could do that because we're too physically inactive. We work all day at a computer screen, and then we drive home and we relax in front of the television. We're not physically very active. So for us, it's difficult to eat 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. Most of us don't even manage 5. But if you're as physically active as the Victorians were, burning 4, 5, 6,000 calories a day, of course you can eat 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. I know because I tried it. First of all, I lost weight, I got very fit, and I was hungry all the time, and it was very easy to eat 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. And 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, now we're getting close to what you find in a bottle of Monavie juice. So they were eating a super Victorian, a super Mediterranean diet. And what you find in the Monavie juice is a super Mediterranean diet. So what does that do? Well, first of all, we know that they lived as long as we do today. Women lived a little longer today, but that's because of family planning. Very surprisingly, we found that men today actually do not live as long as they used to. Go to the old cemeteries, look at the tombstones, and you will see that our great-grandparents lived longer lives than we do today. And they were healthy right up